In this episode of my podcast, I sit down and speak just briefly with Jamie Catto. Jamie is one of the founder members of Faithless. You might remember them from the 90s. They're still going strong. Maxi Jazz, Jamie Catto, Sister Bliss, Rollo were all members of the band. And they had songs such as Insomnia, which was, I think, a massive hit at the time. He then went on to form One Giant Leap. And he's not just a musician, though. He explores lots of different things. He runs retreats, workshops. He's written a book called Insanely Gifted, which is all about turning your demons into rocket fuel for creativity and to steer your life in a direction that is aligned with who you are and what you want to do. And that's one of the things I wanted to speak to him about, because he seems to be making a good life for himself, doing interesting stuff. And I think deep down that's probably what all of us really want, more or less. He describes himself as someone who facilitates personal, professional and creative breakthroughs through workshops, retreats and mentoring. Describes himself as a creative facilitator, a mischief maker and a trailblazer. Interestingly though, and this is why I wanted to speak to him, he directed the last documentary about Ram Dass. Now, Ram Dass is one of the founding fathers of what we would call the mindfulness movement here in the West, and he was one of the experimenters with mind-altering drugs in the 1970s with Timothy Leary, and then he kind of kept on finding that he would have these amazing experiences, but then when the drugs wore off, he would always come down and back to reality. So he sought ways to kind of prolong that high, that connection. And he travelled extensively in India, where he discovered what we would call mindfulness, just being here right now and really enjoying and savouring what it is to be and to feel and to just exist in this moment with all its hardships, all its joys, all its sorrow, all its pain, all its comfort, everything. And I wanted to talk very quickly with Jamie about some of the themes in the film, namely learning to sit with who we are and what we feel, and possibly is there a way through that to enlightenment. Thich Nhat Hanh says that enlightenment is only ever a breath away, and maybe it's in a breath itself, and it's not a state of being but just a moment of insight or a moment of release, just like we get when we breathe. So that was some of the topics I wanted to talk to Jamie about. It was a very short call because he is a very busy man, but I hope you enjoy this. And in the meantime, you can also go onto my website and sign up to my newsletter, find out about more podcasts and some of the things I've been thinking, some of the things I've been writing. And when you sign up, you also get a free copy of my book, Shine Manifesto, which is available on Amazon. You can get it in paperback, or if you sign up to my newsletter, it's completely free. So I'll remind you about that at the end. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy this short conversation with me and the interesting and amazing Jamie Catto. Cheers. So, Jamie Catto, thank you so much for your time today. I've been following your work recently a little bit, and there's a lot there that resonates with me. And clearly you're going down a road that I'm just starting out on. And so I wanted to kind of just try and have a little bit of a conversation, scratch that surface a little bit. I started watching Becoming Nobody, your film with Ram Dass, and we got to the part where he was talking about becoming comfortable with death. And it was a little bit emotional for me and the person I was watching it with. So we had to pause it there, unfortunately. But there's a lot in there that made me think. And I was wondering if we could just have a little bit of a conversation about that, if that's possible.
Right on.
So I did a meditation teacher training course with Jack Cornfield and Tara Brach a little while ago. And they introduced me to the concept of RAIN, which is when you feel an emotion, you recognize it, you allow it, and then you investigate it and you nurture it. So it's kind of showing kindness to whatever it is you're going through. And this was something that I felt you and Ram Dass touched on a little bit in your conversations in your film. And you talked about, rather than pushing things away, negative emotions or anger or anything like that, just kind of give them up and just sit with them and let them be. This whole idea of not getting too heavy with life, and that seems to be something that's reflected in your workshops. I started watching your which one was it, the practical magic course that you gave, and there's this whole idea of kind of not fighting, not trying too hard to kind of gain equilibrium or peace, but just letting it happen. But how can we? I mean, it's really hard these days when you've got bills to pay and you're watching the news, and the whole world seems to be on fire. How can we nurture that kind of that peace, where we are?
Well, the place that it begins from, or there are many places, but one great starting point in a practical way is first to acknowledge that we've all been educated and brainwashed into a culture where we are taught to push away anything that feels edgy or uncomfortable. It's a comfort addicted culture. Get a headache, take a pill. And the first thing, if you really want to go on this journey, is to be able to really commit to realizing that life will be full of pleasure and pain. And we can't just cherry pick the pleasure and constantly strategize to avoid the pain. And to look at the pain frame it differently. The ego is constantly just looking at pain as an enemy.
Yeah.
Or things we don't want as an enemy. When really, pain is one of the ways that the body emotionally flushes out much of the accumulation of all the pain of our lives that we haven't expressed. We all have a huge, like Eckhart Tolle calls it, the pain body, an accumulation of all the anger we haven't raged, all the tears we haven't cried because we have no permission in our culture to cry.
So it's like a kind of bottled up energy that just...
Yes, we all have this accumulation in us. And that's why we overreact so much to everything and freak out when someone upsets us disproportionately to what just happened every time. The body's genius system in mending itself is looking to stir up those feelings so that they can be felt, because we've spent so long not feeling them. And when you feel them, and it doesn't have to be feeling them in a distraught, collapsing way, just by being loving, being the adult that can hold that regressed child while it feels its grief or it feels its anger, to be able to stay present with it, not get spiritual narcolepsy and just fall asleep and let that regressed child take the wheel and strategize its way out of it and go into battle or go into escape. To say, no, I'm going to stay with this. And just by feeling it, that's it. All it requires is presence. It doesn't require analysis. It doesn't require, some secret mantra or anything. All it requires is the willingness to feel it when the waves come. And when you feel it, the body's genius dissolves it and flushes out today's cupful. So the ego and the soul are kind of almost struggling with each other, because the ego is always looking for comfort and to avoid any of those pains, whereas the soul is looking for those pains so that they can be wisely felt with presence and leave. So if you're always in an ego framing of, oh no, I don't want to feel this, oh no, I don't want to feel that, oh no, I don't want to feel this, then the soul never gets to flush out all that immense constipation. And it accumulates and it accumulates and it accumulates until when you're in your 40s, you have a breakdown or a bankruptcy or something, divorce,
midlife crisis, whatever it might be.
So the first step is to really say, okay, I know that my body's genius, my soul's genius is giving me these replays of the pain I never felt in the past, and I'm going to stay with it as much as I can.
I mean, certainly when I've practiced rain, that the kind of recognition and the sitting and the non-judgmental awareness of what I'm feeling, by the time I've kind of gone through the process, it has softened it a lot. So, you start off angry and then you kind of say, well, okay, I'm angry. Why am I angry? Okay, let's explore that. What's that telling me? And by the time you get through that process, okay, you might still be angry, but it's not that same kind of burning, uncontrollable rage that you had to begin with, or the suffering, or whatever it is. Do you think there's a danger? I mean, Sharon Salzberg talks about searching for equanimity. So this kind of state of being where There is no kind of, nothing bad can happen to you that will knock you off your kind of feet, for example. You can weather any storm. But is there a sense or a danger that if we start to become comfortable with the pain and the suffering and all of these kind of uncomfortable things that we are flushing out and growing from, that we start to take the edge off the joy at the same time? We kind of find this middle ground of, I don't know, emotional blandness, if you like.
Depends what you mean by joy. Um, Feeling peaceful to me is joyful.
Yeah.
Not being grasping towards the joy and the, oh, I need another dopamine hit, I need another distraction, I need another lift.
Yeah.
I do want to take the edge off that. I don't want to be in that grasping, searching for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I want to be here and now, where I am, in the pleasure and the pain. So yeah, no, I don't think there's a danger of that, because actually in that spaciousness, there's a different kind of joy that comes in, which is a savoring of the deliciousness of this moment in all its forms. So yes, it may take the edge off the kind of joy which is like a dopamine hit,
Yeah.
but it actually has a much bigger joy that is the real joy of not being yanked left and right like an addict.
Yeah. And actually saying, right here, right now, there's pleasure in this. I mean, Ramdas talks about kind of the exquisite aches and pains that he has that day that he met you at his home in the film.
Yeah.
And I suppose, yeah, it's that understanding that is real and that is beautiful, and that is, whatever's going on right now is real and explorable and part of the human experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Not denying the humanity, certainly, that life is full of pleasure and pain.
yeah.
And often also there's so much treasure in the pain. There's not just the body's amazing emotional plumbing system of getting rid of today's cup full of accumulation. There's also great illuminations, because the flavor of that pain will tell you where you're still clinging, where you're still believing things that are not serving you, where you're still hooked into childlike compensating beliefs that you've just lived religiously since you decided when you were 7, I'm not creative, or people don't like me, or I can't trust men, or whatever other things, the decisions we make, we live religiously by them. These conclusions we made when we were immature children, we never look at them again. They become our protective kind of armor.
And they keep us children in a way. They stop us from maturing.
Exactly. But if you question them, you go, oh, why? It's a great question to ask when you're feeling upset, which is, what would I have to believe is true to be feeling like this right now?
Yeah.
And when you go, oh, I'm believing that if this happened, life would be unlivable. And you go, well, is that true? Well, no, actually, life would be hard for a bit, and then I'd get over it. Like, you suddenly realize that you can reframe all the conclusions of your childhood and be much freer in your adult life to experience things that are not going to be the great cataclysms that the regressed child thinks they will be. You can go into dialogue with those places inside and ask it what it needs, because usually when you're acting out and you're upset, we want to reject those parts of ourselves. We're embarrassed about our anger. We're embarrassed about our clinging. So we want to push the whole experience away. But if you look a bit closer, you can realize that behavior that you're exhibiting is actually a signpost to a legitimate need you have that you have not been serving. So it's a really good thing to, to feel into, what am I really needing underneath this dysfunctional behavior? What is it that I really need here? And then you can make an adult choice to meet that need in a healthy way. And a lot of people skip that part. They think because it's an acting out dysfunctional thing, it just needs to be rejected, pushed away, healed, dissolved, got rid of. But no, don't lose the treasure, don't lose the harvest.
Yeah.
Which is the signpost that, hey, there's a real legitimate need under here that I need to take care of. How can I do so healthily? That's the question to ask.
So what is the ultimate aim then? So you get these emotions that come up, that basically signposts, and you can either choose to follow them or you choose to push them away. And then the next time something happens, they come up again. I mean, are you just trying to reinforce a state of being able to deal with them healthily, or is there a kind of end goal to this?
I have no end goal. I don't think about the future in that way. Like I'm going to reach a point. That's another trap, another sort of yang masculine. I need to get to the finish line, like at school. I'm going to graduate, and then I'll be enlightened. It doesn't work that way. you know. No, it's just today. It's like you've got to live life a little bit like a 12-step drug addict. You just do today.
Yeah.
How loving can I be to me and my process and the people around me today? How accepting can I be? And it's okay when you can't be. There's no failure. That's another thing. Is you have to look at the days where you're collapsing and all of this wisdom, just you can't quite locate that place in you that can get it. That's okay too. You got to make it all okay, including the days when it's not okay. Oh, I'm really fucking not doing this very well today. Not mind. Krishnamurti said, want to know? He said, my secret is I don't mind what happens. And it's all about embracing the humanity, not trying to head towards some spiritual ideal that I'm going to be someone who's bulletproof and never tossed on the waves of being a human. No, it's like I'm going to embrace being a human and realize that some days I'm going to be fucking depressed and not want to get out of bed. And other days I'm going to be shining bright and of service to everyone around me. And other days I'm going to be addicted and escaping. And other days I'm going to be in my boots. And it's like not minding that, being a witness to that process without some judgment that it's not spiritual enough or not advanced enough or some sort of failure. That's the trick, is to not look at yourself as a failure when you're being human.
Do you think, there's a lot of talk about enlightenment. Do you think that just enlightenment in itself is just a state of just being, complete release from any holding on or any trying, and just being where you are in this moment? And just
enlightenment is not giving a fuck about enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes me wonder, all of these people like me, perhaps, who are kind of exploring these ideas of enlightenment, watching your films, reading your manifesto, and your videos and what have you, we're kind of saying to ourselves, enlightenment is not about seeking enlightenment, but we're kind of on that path where we're trying to be a bit more enlightened in the way we go about our days, living our lives, being authentic and intentional. But then there are people who are not on that path at all, and they don't care, and they're just kind of going home, watching soap operas, doing all the kind of things that we might see as not very rewarding. But actually, are they the people who are the more enlightened because they are just being, and they're being them true selves? Is there a kind of paradox?
Yeah, there's definitely a paradox. As I said, we're trained in school to get to the next level, to achieve something.
Yeah.
And the great achievement is to drop the achievement trip.
Yeah. So it's a bit like the old, is it Wu Wei? The kind of doing without doing.
Active non-doing, yeah.
So I guess when you're in that space, you're doing active non-doing, you're more aligned with your authentic, intrinsic self to a degree. You're not trying to be something you're not. You're not trying to grasp at something you're not. You're just being truthful and honest about why you're here, what you're doing here, what you're feeling right now.
Yeah, it's so simple. Just be human.
How does that convert into? So when I originally reached out to you, I saw you as someone who was building a life that is interesting and rewarding. So how do we translate these kind of notions and concepts of letting go and just being into transforming our lives and doing things that are, that on the one hand pay the bills, but on the other hand reward us and give us a fulfilled and wonderful existence?
We talk about it in terms of a phrase we use, like the twin trail. That
Right.
whatever you're doing out in the world, whether it be your entrepreneurial business, your job, your family life, whatever you're doing, your soul is going to use that to send you deeper into your own heart and lessons and challenges and the next thing that you need to look at. Like the next lesson is right where you are, Ramdas says.
Yeah.
So it's like a twin trail. You don't need to plot it in the way that you're saying, how do we do this? There is no how. Live your life.
Yeah.
The conveyor belt of what you need next is coming without you having to plot it. You don't need to map it out. That's not your job as a human ego. Your job is to thrive on earth and create circumstances where you feel in harmony, You feel comfortable, create circumstances where you feel like you're thriving, that feel like good for you.
I mean,
Some people it might go on.
is that an intentional thing, or is it something where you just kind of, you go through life and you kind of say, oh, hang on, this looks interesting. Let's have a look at this.
Yeah, you
And
trust your body's compass. It's very good to get, one great way to do it is get very embodied. We have a practice in my workshops called full body listening, where we have an internal radar, an internal motion sensitive camera, whenever you feel anything, you notice it rather than think it. So when someone upsets you, you go, oh, solar plexus just exploded, rather than how dare that person, blah, 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 blah. You meet it first in the body. And that includes your excitement and your attraction. And when you're a bit more embodied and you really listen to your body, then you use the feeling of attraction and excitement and turn on as your compass. You trust it. And you go, oh, I feel interested and curious about that. I'm going to go over there. You just use that as your compass.
I mean, I've noticed in the past that sort of feelings of anxiety and fear can sometimes feel very similar to feelings of excitement and happiness, but we just interpret them differently, I guess, on a kind of psychological, emotional level. Is this what you mean when you're talking about being sort of intimate, much more intimate in the way you go about life?
Intimate means you're listening in this moment to what your body's telling you, to what your system is telling you, rather than knee-jerk going towards the comfort, pushing away anything edgy. You give it a bit more of a moment to examine it, to feel it before you discard it. So there's a lot of things that are going to come towards us. Our ego has a very fixed, safe view of just avoiding all risk, all change. So things come towards us, it bats that away like tennis balls, one of those tennis ball machines on a tennis court. But actually between here and here, many of those tennis balls turn into opportunities, turn into treasure. And unexpectedly, I didn't think I wanted that, but oh wow, that, a lot of frogs turn into princes.
Yeah.
So I just recommend, just allow the tennis ball to get a bit closer before you discard it. Like it says in that old book, Think and Grow Rich, it says, the greatest opportunities come cloaked in disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a lot of things which we reject out of hand in a knee-jerk way because our ego thinks it knows better and wants to play it safe. Let it get a bit closer before you discard it, and just let it surprise you. And yes, many of them are still things you don't want, and you've got plenty of time to bat them away, but many of them turn into treasure.
Yeah, it's like I think it's either the Chinese or the Japanese kanji. Is it the Japanese symbol for crisis is actually made up of two symbols, one being danger and one being opportunity. And
What they say.
Sorry?
That's what they say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure people have had it tattooed on them and it actually says something else.
It says choose from these below, yeah.
Yeah. But Napoleon Hill obviously knew like how to capitalize on risk, I suppose. How do you feel safe taking risks, or is that not the point? I mean, how do you take a leap of faith without
practice doing it a bit more often? You don't have to go from 0 to 100. Start with some small ones. Tell your friend what you really think. Wear that thing that you sometimes think you won't wear because people might think. Do some small things. Don't start straight from. It's like if you're, if you think you can fly, take off from the ground. Don't jump off the roof, as Bill Hicks says.
Yeah.
Just start experimenting. Don't give such importance to 100% safety. Live a week with 99.5% safety and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Just experiment with some very, very small, doable, low risk things, and see if you get a taste for it.
Do you think we add too much gravity to most of the things we do and feel and think?
Massively. Yeah. We've built all these things into such phantoms. What people think being very, very high up the list. Actually, what most people think, who cares really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're not even thinking what you think they're thinking. You're often imagining on their behalf into their mind what they're thinking. They're not even thinking that. They're not even thinking anything about you.
Yeah.
Most of it is imagined, of all this stuff we're protecting ourselves against, catastrophizing and living through things that never even happen. The amount of worry and control strategy we give unnecessarily because the brain is so accustomed to be on this like hysterical safety trip, when half the stuff, if not more, was never going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And yet you wasted all day being anxious and controlling, making sure it didn't happen when it wasn't even going to happen.
And I suppose if it does happen, you've made it kind of happen twice because you've already been through the torture before it happened
Yeah.
the first time.
Yeah, but I really can't recommend enough to start small.
Yeah.
We're snorkeling, we're not going deep scuba. Just be curious. Be curious about your resistances and ask yourself, what am I really resisting here? On whose behalf am I resisting? What is the real risk? Is this really, just reassess all that control and all that safety and all that limitation. And just as I said, whether it be something you wear one day or something you say one day or something you show up for one day, just experiment in very, very, very small ways. Like if you were actually teaching a little child, which is what the place in us that doesn't want to handle it is, there's a little child that lives in us. If you have a little kid and you want to get it to swim and it's scared of the water, you don't chuck it, unless you're some mad Russian, you don't chuck it into the pool. You say, let's just sit on the edge and dangle our toes in the water for a little bit and feel the splish splash. And then let's stand up to our ankles in the water. And, that's what you would do with a kid. So just do that. Be gentle with yourself. Gentleness is the key to it all.
Yeah.
Don't have some high ideals or some high condemnation of yourself when you didn't meet them. It's just totally unnecessary. Treat yourself with gentleness. Rub your chest. Go, all right, mate. I'm going to take it gently today. How about we do this? Just like chill out.
Yeah. Because there seems to be this kind of Western capitalist idea of what success is. And it means, fighting to the death in order to get what, the spoils of the battle. I win, so that means you have to lose, that kind of thing. Whereas this is a much gentler approach to fulfilling and moving towards our potential, I guess, and having an enriched life experience. I spoke with Martha Beck on my last podcast. I don't know if you know her. She's very well known in America, and she is a kind of life coach in the loosest term. She's a sort of spiritual growth writer, and she talks about a thing she calls her spirit mule, which is basically about tuning into your intuition and noticing the things you notice. So we have a lot of information bombarding us every day, and our brain and our subconscious are filtering through it, and so things pop up. And one example that I can use is that I was on the train writing an article about fear, or writing an essay for my blog about fear, and I kind of got a little bit stuck. And then I looked out of the window and there was a pub, and above the pub in neon letters it said Courage, and obviously it's the name of the brewery. But right then, at that moment, I was given a sign that my intuition tapped into, and I was reminded of that when I was watching your practical magic video that you have on your website, and just this kind of idea of tuning into our kind of unspoken inner voice, if you like, as a kind of guide to what we need to notice, where we need to go. I mean, is this something that you do? Is it sort of something you do in your workshops?
When I'm in a good mood.
Yeah.
I don't know. As I said, it's like we're still trying to hold on to this method.
Yeah.
Some days that method will serve you. You're trying to stop smoking so much pot.
Yeah.
And you walk past the park and you see a sign that says "Keep off the grass," and
Yeah.
it seems incredibly significant. And other days, if you're in a more grasping way, then you can actually take yourself into some sort of minor psychosis, reading every sign and reading the back of the bus ticket. Like if you're finding yourself grasping and it's feeling uncomfortable in the body, the chances are that you're taking it too far and you're not aligned.
Yeah.
If it feels enjoyable and gives you a bit of a giggle, the chances are it is aligned.
Yeah, I mean, Ram Dass talked about life had to be lived humorously, and joyfully and with a sense of
Yeah, but there are days when you can't. You know, it doesn't have to be. It feels great when you have the space in yourself to feel humorous, but when you're worried about your wages and the COVID and the argument that's going on downstairs between your dad and your sister, or whatever, your kids treating you like shit, or when things are difficult, you're not fucking feeling humorous, and that's all
yeah,
right. You're not failing because you're not living it humorously on days which don't feel humorous. It's lovely when you can live your life humorously. Live your life authentically.
yeah,
Today I feel shit. Okay, what can I do? What's the most self-caring thing I can do? I think I'll cancel that meeting and make myself some soup.
yeah,
Or I'll have an extra long bath with some salts. Or I will put on some music that I like and I will stroke my chest and self-soothe. Or I'll
yeah,
call a friend. Or I will obliviate. I'm going to get the crack bowl out today. I don't fucking care what anyone thinks about it. Whatever. Just like, hopefully healthily. I'm joking when I say crack
yeah,
bowl. But it's not about living it humorously. It's about not making yourself wrong for how today feels,
yeah,
but meeting it as compassionately and as caringly as you can. And if it's a collapsing day where you just can't get out of bed because of the depression that's weighing on your chest, then just, what is the most loving thing I can do about that? Oh, maybe a friend will come round and cook the kids breakfast for me, or maybe I'll take an extra hour to get out of bed, or better still, move my body. There are certain things you can do that really help on a tough day. Like moving the body, putting on some music, standing up and swaying around the room is good. Drinking lots of extra water is good. Give yourself a fighting chance. Get into nature. Do the things which make you feel good. Call a friend.
yeah,
Give yourself a fighting chance, but don't make yourself wrong for having a crappy day and that you can't live it humorously today.
yeah. Well, I think that's the big problem, isn't it? Just this constant guilt that we shouldn't be feeling this way.
Yeah, and you are going to feel this way. You're a human.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing. I think in this, we're living in a very processed world. It's systems, it's functions, it's high-rise flats, it's clocking in and clocking out, barcodes, all of this kind of stuff. And we're not built that way. We're not built to be, funneled and processed and churned, and so we are going to struggle from time to time.
Yeah,
I guess. Just one notion then. So how do we? So in the one sense, there's about this whole idea of letting go and easing off. But in the other sense, there's this kind of idea of putting this wu wei, this action through inaction, into use to create a life that works for us and is enjoyable. And that certainly seems to be something you're doing with the workshops that you run and the retreats and the films you make. How do we not take our foot off the gas so much that we just kind of stop moving altogether?
I don't think it's a problem. Take your foot off the gas and stop moving altogether for a little bit. After a while, when you've stopped moving altogether, if that doesn't serve you or feel good, you'll put your foot back on the gas again.
So you get the itch, yeah, and just be
Yeah,
human,
you'll
I
know.
guess.
That's the great thing about the soul's curriculum, if you believe in it, which I do.
Yeah,
You can't go wrong. Because if you do take your foot off the gas and it's too long, your soul will feel, we need to get going again now. Not in a self-flagellatory way. If you say, should I try longer in this relationship? You can't make a wrong decision, because if you try longer and it doesn't work, you'll be shown.
yeah.
So you don't need to worry about pre-calculating it. It's going to show you through the experience.
So it's just I guess, just about listening to your feelings, what you're feeling right now, and just
Yeah.
getting comfortable with that. Don't push
Not
too hard.
second guessing and controlling, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Don't
And on
grasp.
the days where you're second guessing and controlling, you're like, look at me second guessing and controlling. How adorable. You have to find every one of your failures more adorable than the last.
Yeah, absolutely, and learn from it and grow from it, and say, what's this teaching me? I guess.
Yeah.
Not just
And even if you can't come up with an answer, no big deal.
Hmm.
Lighten up over the whole process.
Yeah, and I
Even the
suppose
days where you can't lighten up.
that's your motto in a way, isn't it? We need to kind of rescue ourselves from ourselves, and just back
Let
off.
go of the school days programming that you've got to be getting it right. You've got to be getting high marks. God has a scorecard for you.
Yeah,
Just drop it.
yeah,
The secret of enlightenment is stopping caring so much about enlightenment.
yeah, absolutely, and just be. Actually, on that one last note, I do have one other thing. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and it was something that I think you reminded me of in your film. And they said enlightenment can be only a breath away. I mean, is enlightenment something we know and feel, or is it just something that happens when we're not expecting it?
I would drop the whole word.
Yeah, just get rid of it altogether.
Yeah.
And just live and be in.
Just have a human day with all its flavors and textures, and just be content with that.
Yeah.
Drop the destination.
Yeah. Awesome. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. I won't keep you longer.
Thank you. Send people to jamiecatto.com
Yeah,
if they want an online workshop or join in with the fun. It's very unpretentious, and you get a lot of aha moments with very little effort.
And you run retreats as well. You got one in Corfu next week.
Yeah.
And
Shadows in the Sun.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. With lots of delicious vegetarian food from what I've seen you post, which is great. So, well, I hope that goes really well and you don't get stuck with any quarantine issues or anything like that. And if you do, then enjoy the sun a bit longer. And
I've got a good book.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic.
Thanks for having me. Love to meet you.
And you. Thanks ever so much for that. Bye for now. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with me and Jamie Catto. There were some interesting points raised there. Would have loved to have gone into it in much more detail, but like I said, he is a very busy man, so didn't get an awful lot of time with him. But I think we got some really interesting stuff there. If you want to find out more about his work, the retreats, the workshops, that sort of thing, just go to www.jamiecatto, that's JAMIECATTO.com. And you can find out all about his work there. And if you want to find out more about my stuff, my writing, just go to www.chrisbrock, that's CHRISBROCK.UK, chrisbrock.uk. Hope you enjoy this podcast. If you want to get a copy of my book for free, you can sign up to my newsletter, and you can download it to your Kindle, to your Nook, whatever device you're using, or as a PDF, whatever you want. So get it on my website, sign up to my newsletter, and I'll keep you informed of some of the ideas that I'm doing, thinking about some of the concepts I'm playing with, and everything else that goes through this kind of messy place in here on a daily basis. All right, so have a great day and see you soon, hopefully.